Hey y'all, welcome to the very first episode of the Confessions of an Ex-Perfectionist podcast. So in this introductory episode, I'll be sharing why I want to create this podcast and sharing what you can expect from this show, from this platform. It's gonna be a journey, y'all, and I'm excited to have you along for the ride. So let's get into it. Hey, it's Niara, and welcome to Confessions of an Ex-Perfectionist, where we talk about the hangups and holdups of being a perfectionist, and instead trading that in for a new approach on life, where we find the balance between striving for excellence while also doing things that are fulfilling and true to ourselves, honoring who we are as we strive to become all that we desire to be. Perfection is overrated, and you are way too amazing to worry about being perfect. Let's chat. Affirmation of the day. I embrace this new chapter of my life with open arms. Hey y'all, shout out to y'all for popping out for the first episode, okay? Welcome to Confessions of an Ex-Perfectionist. I'm so happy to be starting this journey. This podcast has been about a year in the making. About this time last year, right after my 25th birthday, I started thinking a lot of things. Those who have crossed the 25-year-old threshold know how your brain changes. You start seeing things differently. You start like, oh, I used to like this. I don't like that. You just take on a whole new perspective. And for me, that age was very much about questioning everything. And in that self journey of turning 25, when you're not like a baby adult anymore, it's like, okay, I feel like you're a few years into adulthood, trying to find your stride. Now it's time to really take agency, responsibility over my life. And part of that was like, healing or unpacking, unlearning, or just appreciating, reflecting my formative years, from childhood to teenhood, and observing what were the things I wanted to keep and what were some of the habits, ideals, or whatever else that I wanted to let go. And guess what one of those was? Perfectionism. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Now, the title is Ex-Perfectionist, but honestly, most days it's more like a recovering perfectionist because, growth and healing is not linear. It can happen in different stages. It could take a while to break out habits, especially if you've had those habits for 5+ years, perhaps a decade or multiple decades. To let go of those habits can take time too. But looking back and reflecting, I was like, perfectionism has had such a hold on my life. Part of my self-work and working through therapy to figure out how perfectionism got such a hold on me, a lot of that work was like, okay, where did this originate from? And it's so funny because I feel like multiple things probably contributed to my perfectionism. Number one, I am a Virgo. We out here, shout out to the Virgos. But a main attribute people classify Virgos is perfectionism, overthinking, yada, 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 so much. So I'm like, gosh, maybe it's written in the stars. It's just part of my energetic chemical makeup to be this way. Another possible contribution is being a firstborn eldest daughter. Like, shout out to my firstborns. Shout out to the eldest daughters. Y'all know. As an older sibling, I've always wanted to be a good example. And when you're the first kid, you a guinea pig for real. Everybody figuring it out. When your parents instill greatness in you or want you to be a good example for good reasons. It's like, oh yes, I want to do well. I want to make my parents proud. I want to make my family proud. I just want to do well in general, And another thing is like, oh, being a preacher's daughter. Hey, shout out to the PKs. Y'all, it is so interesting being a child of someone who is a leader, a public figure. And it's so funny because the pressure wasn't even really heavy from my parents. It was more so outside people, whether it was other church folk or just even other people just out in the world. Once they found out you a PK, it's a wrap. They like, which one are you? Are you prude? Are you super righteous and holy? Or are you wild? And listen, there could be seasons of both. Okay, well, we may get to those stories. Okay, but it's so interesting recognizing those patterns or circumstances that built up that level of pressure on myself And then now being older, I realize I get to decide what I want to take with me moving forward. It's really up to you to decide to make those changes. Because it's like, yeah, perhaps when you were younger, when you were 8 years old, someone told you something. Maybe you failed a test in ninth grade and someone's like, oh, you're a failure. Whatever it is, but now you're an adult and you're grown. So forget all those people. But I get sometimes it takes unpacking and unlearning and reframing. And it takes work to shape a new mindset. And that's part of what I want this podcast to do. I'm going to be sharing my stories of me navigating, overcoming perfectionism, sharing old stories of how perfectionism actually benefited me, how positive reinforcement and getting awards for being high achieving encouraged more. And I also share stories of the really not so good part where I put so much stress and pressure on myself where it became suffocating. So I'm excited to share those stories with you guys. I'm sure we'll laugh and cry and feel all the things, and perhaps you'll relate to some of the stories too. And I really wanted to have this platform, want to create this space, this show, so that others on their journey don't feel alone. Again, growth is a journey. Sometimes you got to take some steps forward, you'll take some steps back, you'll walk in a circle, you'll backslide, all that. But we in this, we're working towards a life that is more fulfilling and more true to who we are, living life on our terms and living life by our own standards, not the standards of other people. Because guess what? If you're forever living for other people's standards, it will always be a rat race. It will always be a hamster wheel of trying to achieve this thing and please everybody. And guess what? You're not put on this earth to please everybody else, okay? Because I myself had reached a point, and this is where I was like, maybe I have an issue where I was people-pleasing so much or living my life according to other people's expectations, yada, 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 and I myself wasn't happy or satisfied or fulfilled. And I was like, this sucks. I was like, yeah, this ain't it. We got to make a change. We got to make a change. So ever since then, I've been doing what I can to shape a new mindset, to do the work of letting go of other people's expectations, of affirming myself, gaining trust in myself and my perspective. Because sometimes in life, there'll be things that only make sense to you and it don't make sense to other people. And people will be like, well, how does that make sense? And sometimes the answer is it's just what I want, or I just like it, or simply it makes me happy. And that is what you want to work more toward. Because as the saying goes, you can't pour from the empty cup. You have to pour into yourself because this is your one life. At the end of every episode, I'm going to be offering a lasting thought for you guys to take away, some questions for you guys to ask yourself along your journey. I want this to be interactive. So with it being the first week, here is the first exercise I have for you. It is a fill in the blank. The statement is, letting go of perfectionism will allow me to blank. So I want you to think on that this week. Write it down somewhere, write it in a journal, keep it in your mind, write it on a Post-it note. And if you want to share your response with others and see my response, you could go ahead over onto the Confessions of an Ex-Perfectionist Facebook page to keep the discussion going on there. No matter what contributed to you becoming a perfectionist, if it's unhealthy or no longer serves you, it's time to let it go. So shout out to you for taking a step on this ex-perfectionist journey, because perfection is way overrated. Listen, you are unique. All the things that make you you is needed in this world, okay? My hope is for you to feel inspired, encouraged, and most importantly, feel good about who you are. Thank you so much for tuning in. Whatever platform you're listening from, be sure to like and follow so you can get notifications for every episode upload. This will be a weekly podcast, and I'm so excited to have you along for the ride, and I'll see you next week.